excited.
Oh yeah.
You here? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You here with the both of you? Talk about the carriers. From surviving to thriving. So, I think there's been a lot of conversations right over the past day and a half about what's going on in the market. We've been talking a lot about market conditions. It's tough out there. Margins are thin, right? So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that from the carrier perspective and what you guys are seeing, what's kind of current state and where are we going. But before we do, want to make sure give yourselves an opportunity to introduce yourselves to the crowd. If you don't mind, we'll start with you.
All right. Yep. I'm Clayton Griffin. I'm president at OTR Solutions. I've been at OTR since 2012, so kind of shortly after we were founded. Today, OTR consists of two platforms. One that's a carrier-facing platform that handles kind of back office, working capital, fuel, banking solutions, and then a newer kind of broker-facing solution, which was the ePay Manager product that we acquired about a year and a half ago. That also does kind of back office solutions for freight brokers specifically. So that's also kind of working capital, freight audit and pay, basically finding any way we possibly can to help reduce cost per load in freight brokerage operations, which has been a big focus over the course of the last few years. I think the same applies for carrier operations, how they can really get detailed and manage costs in a way that give them the best chance to survive really bad markets and thrive in markets that are a little more favorable for them. And I think without knowing truly what is embedded in your cost basis, it's very hard to get granular enough to manage them effectively. So.
Adam Wingfield, founder of Innovative Logistics Group. I've been in this business about 25 years, mainly on the asset side in the very beginning, and then recently, I would say 2012 and on, moved into non-asset, more focused on the educational perspective and technology that helps small carriers make better decisions, do things to help improve their ROI, do things to help improve their cost of operations, and just like Clayton was talking about, helping them understand without the tech at that component, but be more granular and understanding the importance of being able to know their numbers, have some sort of routine, some of backing, because we know, if you don't know, small carriers are a large majority of what we see going up and down the highways each day. They're a very important part of capacity. Of course, as fragmented it may be, small carriers are a very important component of capacity, especially on the spot sides of the field. They're the ones that's most volatile and fragmented. So our focus is to help improve and help showcase that. We've got some really true business partners on the ground floor, whether it be a mom and pop, some one truck carrier operation, or maybe it'd be a little bit more scale. But our focus is to make sure that the small carrier is recognized, represented, and well educated so that way we can step forward. And most recently, some of you may have seen me here with FreightWaves. We partnered with FreightWaves last year to create a small carrier specific element called the Playbook. And the Playbook, we're really excited for. The growth of the Playbook has been exponential. The excitement behind Playbook is exponential. Our goal is to create an ecosystem and a one-stop hub where carriers can go and get everything that they need from a partnership perspective, from resources perspective, education, and everything and all branded up. So that's a little bit about me, just a little bit.
No, that's great. And I think it's a good part or a good spot for us to jump off at, as well as, in your program, what are some of the things in this market that you are seeing with your partners that, is making it really difficult for them to do business right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that for the last 7 to 8 weeks, man, spot rates have just really trickled. We have seen no incremental changes in spot rates. Volumes are dragging the floors, import volumes are dropping. And then when you look at things that carriers are looking for, that demand around this time of the year, where it spills out into the spot load boards, not quite seeing that. And that makes it very difficult when you tie in that from June to now, diesel fuel has went up almost 30 cents a gallon. So bringing all of those components together makes it very tough for a small carrier in that environment, because they're not hedging fuel, they're not buying in discounts and bulks. They're having to pay fuel at that point at the pump. So whatever discounts they're able to rely on is what they rely on. But unfortunately, some of those things, when you couple that together, stagnation in rates, you couple that inflation and fuel costs, where the American consumer now is seeing some of that improvement at the pump with some of those pump prices coming down, Diesel fuel is just not doing that. We saw this year a high of almost $3.78, $3.79 a gallon. That's high when it comes down to for a small carrier that's trying to operate in the marketplace. And then when you look back a couple of weeks ago, we had I guess you would call it a false flag moment when rates just kind of just itched up overnight. And then they started subsiding back off. So you saw carriers get caught up in that moment as well. So I think that ultimately, man, those components, when you don't have demand, you don't have it in the sight, you're hoping capacity will bleed off, because ultimately that's what we need now. We need capacity to kind of bleed off, but that's one of the things that I see that small carriers are really struggling with. Is really, when is this going to end? People talk about a freight recession, but it almost feel like the Great Depression, when you come down to the market.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you guys see a lot of data yourselves as well, especially in kind of the long tail of the market. So what sorts of things are you guys seeing on your
Yeah, I mean, a very similar story to the one that Adam just told. I think our focus has always been on giving our clients the best chance to be successful, and so a lot of our tools and technologies, working capital products are built to help people withstand tough freight markets, providing that discounting, being able to aggregate our demand from a fuel perspective to go out and negotiate really favorable discounts for our carriers, getting them paid as fast as humanly possible so that they can get that money back into their business or keep the wheels turning. I think broadly speaking, an OTR carrier survives kind of 20% more often after a year of having had their authority meaning OTR solutions, than everybody else. But we're really trying to dig into what are the main components that allow that to happen, right? What are the things that a successful carrier is doing today, or one that can at least make it through these worst markets, that carriers that are not as on the ball in certain things are not able to kind of weather the storm. And so, working together with you guys on the Sonar side of the house to bring education, rate visibility, to understand what is the value of your business, how do you increase the value of the business, your business in the market, what are the small things you can do, how do you differentiate yourself in a market where, to Adam's point, it's been over capacity for a significant amount of time. And so the ability to take your business and bring it to someone who has the ability to keep your wheels turning and have them view you as different than everybody else, as a better option than everybody else. I mean, we sit on brokerage floors. I was just with a carrier sales team earlier this week, and he's a flatbed guy who's been in flatbed for a very long time, walking me through his process of how he sources capacity. And a lot of these people have built carrier networks that they're continuing to go and source capacity from. And so they're not as motivated to go out and establish new relationships. You really have to go out of your way and establish yourself as a good, reliable option that someone can count on. Because ultimately, that brokerage is going to want to differentiate themselves as it relates to the rest of their competitors and market peers. And so literally, we stumbled upon a carrier who the notes in their kind of internal TMS were God mode carrier, because they had such a good reputation, and they could be loaded on effectively anything. So I think, the guys that are focused on really differentiating themselves and making relationships that can kind of weather these types of freight markets are the ones that, are having a little more success.
Yeah, I think, certainly would agree on, providing visibility from a rate perspective, from a market perspective to some of the long tail is access they don't typically have.
Yeah.
So I think that's
either cost prohibitive or technology prohibitive. They have so many things going on, getting them, we're really focused on leveraging the relationship that we have and making it something that doesn't add more work to their plate, right? We're taking these historical freight movements that our carriers are running, and we're saying, what is market, right? Are you running your truck at market, or are you potentially, you've been in a relationship and the market has changed, but you're not aware of it because you're not keeping your eye on the ball on these types of things, because these guys are busy. I mean, they got a lot of things going on. They're in many cases, for the very small guys, right, operating the business themselves. And so putting things that are going to be helpful to them from a benchmarking perspective is something we're proactively trying to do to try and give them a leg up.
Yeah, no, we definitely can't wait to bring that to market here
Yep.
shortly. And I also want to get your thoughts on this too. You know, when you think about best in class, you know, from a small carrier operation perspective and the operations, the process, you know, it couldn't be more important right now, right?
Yeah.
A difficult market is you know, everyone up here has said. So what does that look like?
I mean, you know, one of the things is, and I think that a lot of people don't realize that getting a truck is easy, right? Going to a dealership, buying a truck, getting an authority is super easy. It's so easy that fraudsters are doing it every single day. But the hardest part is actually running the business side of it and understanding the important components of the business, the KPIs that are necessary in order for you to run a successful trucking company. And some of those KPIs, they're very fluid. They're not fixed. You know, like your break-even cost every single day is not fixed. It's a fluid, variable thing that changes because every time that wheel turns in a counter or a clockwise motion, there's bills that have to be paid with that. And I think that when you look at that and you tie that into the fact that a lot of folks that start trucking companies, they don't have business plans, they don't have really a long-term goal, they don't understand how to read market dynamics and things like that. And I'm not saying to be an analyst to the nth degree, but to your point, you know, just like to Clayton's point, you need to know what's going on. You need to have an idea of foreshadowing of what's happening. So, you know, if you look back at COVID, when we had all this capacity that came in during the COVID times, those that really, really were aware and really knew what was happening, those are the ones that were very, very worried. Because I think it's a quote, and I might mess this up, so if I get this wrong, just whatever. But they said, you know, when everybody gets excited, you get scared. When everybody's scared, you should be excited. So when you talk about that from an investment perspective, and you look back at COVID, everybody's excited. We should have really, really been scared during that point because then everybody was running to this new bag, this is it, you know. And so when I look at a carrier that really has it all together, they have a deep understanding of the importance of business. And I'm not saying that you have to have a deep understanding about the business side of it, but you have a deep understanding of the importance of it. And what I mean by that is that you have to have the desire to continue to grow within your own business. Your business is the main component, it's the main sauce. So how do you improve that? You improve that from a marketing perspective. And I'm not saying that, you know, have all these fancy marketing objectives, but when I think about marketing from a carrier perspective, marketing is not relationship building. Who am I building relationships with? Am I just focused on, you know, getting a load board subscription and listen, there's nothing wrong with that. But am I focused on just getting a load board subscription, or I'm looking to maximize that by using that load board as a vessel to get me connected with a broker that could probably keep me much busier than if I had to get on the board every single day and look for a load in the morning. My focus should be on building relationships, finding a broker that I can trust, that I can get, to Clayton's point, I can get paid on time, they've got great customers, good to great customers. I'm not saying that they're going to all have, but what does that look like for me? That's number one. Number two, that nice shiny Peterbilt with all that chrome stuff on that, it get paid the same amount of money per mile as that raggedy 2012 FLD that I got. So there's an importance to understand that there's a need to have and want to have. And when you want to be successful, you want to marginalize those fixed expenses as much as you can, because you got to remember the people that went out and bought a truck during COVID, we're now in 2025. Those folks that are still around, they're finally about to get some relief. If they've got good loans, they're finally about to get some relief because those were some inflated prices that they were paying on equipment that they financed for a long term of time. So when I look at that, I look at a small carrier from a standpoint of wanting to be open to growth, want to be open to education and knowledge, and then most importantly, that's looking to focus on how do I improve my business, not necessarily on how I'm going to get on Reddit and complain about this broker, complain to that broker. What am I doing that internally is going to impact my business and help me move forward? So those are just a few things.
No, yeah, I think that's great. I want to unpack that a little bit more though, and kind of think about, you know, if you go from, I have the idea that I want to, you know, open my own trucking company, jump in a truck and get going, you know, take that to you know, what you think, or what is your perspective on, you know, kind of the steps you have to take before you actually get in a truck and start taking loads? You know, what are some of the things you have to have in place?
I mean, Adam certainly has, he quite literally has the playbook, I think, for this. Maybe he's a better person to answer it. But I think to the point Adam made earlier, it's about having a plan, right? Knowing what you want to achieve and how you plan to achieve it. Of course, as we know, very rarely do things go exactly how we plan in this industry. But being prepared and understanding whether something fits in line with your plan, or whether it is outside of your plan, will give you the opportunity to adjust really quickly. And I think that is what, to Adam's point as well earlier, is that today's KPIs may look different than tomorrow's. This market's KPIs may look different than next market or next year's KPIs. But being conscious, we're big believers that what's measured is managed. And so if you're not keeping an eye on these things and at least understanding where have I come from, or what do I plan to, or seeking industry advice about what a benchmark is, where I should be running on a regular basis, just understanding those core elements so that when you get into the business of doing business itself, you are proactively measuring those things that matter and then adjusting your business as quickly as you can to whatever is happening in the industry.
Yeah, maybe if you could add on there too, in this market, what are some specific examples that you've seen in some of your partners where they've really been able to position themselves and navigate this and set themselves up to be around not only next year but the next several years and beyond?
Yeah, sure. And, I love what Clayton said. If you can measure it, you can improve it, right? And I think that some of the things that we have seen is those that take just for the most basic components of, okay, I've got foresight, I've got a plan. Let's talk about what that looks like. Okay, we talk about, hey, these hot zones, whether it's blue to blue or whatever color you're using, to when you're looking on the load board, understand I want to position my truck in a place where I know that I've got a better chance. I'm not going to say that I'm going to come out here and I'm going to get rich off it, but I got a lot of better chance of getting loaded out of this place and getting into a better area than if I did not have this information that I have. And the crazy thing about information and access to information, that's not the end all be all. You've got to not only access the information, but you also have to interpret and plan based on that information. I can say, hey, you know what, looks like, Mid-Atlantic looks pretty hot this week. Okay, I'm gonna send my trucks up in the Mid-Atlantic. I'm not saying I'm going to Cleveland. I'm not saying I'm going to be in Detroit on Tuesday and here on Wednesday, but I'm going to position myself in a marketplace where I know that I got a better opportunity. Okay, what happens if that plan breaks down? That's what they call audibles. So you get in there and now I can shift and I can take that same approach and I don't just fall apart. You got to have plan A and there's a plan B. I think the most important thing is just being fluid in your expectations too. Don't be so rigid in the flaws of what happens when things don't go your way. And just be focused on continuous improvement, continuous growth and development. You're gonna learn so much in this business, whether you're on the carrier side or on the broker side. I think the most important thing is that you have access to the information. How do you have to digest and unpack that information? And I think that from our perspective, what we see on the carrier side, is the ones that are most successful are the ones that follow just the simple blueprints of the same SOP, the same process every week when I establish my week. This is what I'm gonna do this week. We do it every single week. It works sometimes we have to make adjustments on the fly, but we're okay with audibles because that's what it is about us being professionals. And as being an entrepreneur, owning your own business, you are the professional, you're the CEO of your company. So people all the time, if you're the CEO of your company, you need to act like it.
Definitely, yeah. So I think as we wrap up, the SOPs, so KPIs, having access to information is some really key things that I think we've uncovered today that are super important for really everyone, I would say, in the market, but especially the long tail of the market as well. But as we look forward to 2026, we're going to have, I think, an environment that's pretty uncertain. So if you're to look forward to 2026, how do you see some of those things changing? What do you think will be most important for your customers and your partners as we move into that time?
Adam, I'll let you steer it first.
Sure. I think the first thing is that we're not going to get into the mistake of trying to forecast anything, right?
This is recorded, so
I'm not going to be the one to do that. But I think the most important thing is just be prepared to trade your ego in for equity. And there's so much as from just an entrepreneur with type A personalities, we want to be right. Be fluid in your expectations, understand that things are going to change dynamically, or maybe not, maybe static changes, but be prepared for change because we have no idea what's going to happen in 2026. And I don't think anybody in here can stand on the stage and be confident in saying that. So just be ready to continue to be fluid.
I mean, I would echo that as someone who works pretty closely with the data all the time. So I think what we hear, what we see is continued access, continue to view, continue to know what's happening, and be in tune, basically to the market, to your point. So appreciate you guys joining, Clayton with OTR Solutions and Adam with the Innovative Logistics Group and the Playbook. And these guys will all be around. And if you have any questions, hit these guys up after the chat. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.